Welcome back. In this video, you will be learning how to sort a set of elements using selection sort. Selection sort differs from bubble sort. In the selection sort, we will begin with the 0th iteration. That is, iteration starts with 64. So, what I'll do, when iteration starts with 64, 64 must be compared with all the values. Right? 64 needs to be compared with the remaining set of values to check the most minimum value. Here, by seeing, I can tell 11 is the most minimum value. In such case, I have to swap 11 and 64. After swapping, the 0th index iteration would be completed. Next, I will begin with the next iteration, that is the first index iteration, where 25 or whatever the updated value after swapping would be produced. If it is still 25, then 25 needs to be compared with the remaining set of values, ignoring the previous value. So before 25 it is 64. In such case, 64 would be ignored, and after 25 what all values you have, that would be compared. So like when we swap it, 64 would be present at the last, where 11 would be present at the left of the array. So in such case, 12, 22 and 64 would be present, right? So when I compare 12, 22 and 64, 12 is the most least, right? So again I have to swap 25 and 12. When I swap 25 and 12, 12 would be in place of 25, and in place of 12, 25 would be occupied, right? Now after this, again I have to move on to the second iteration, where after 25 what all values I have, that need to be swapped, which will find the most minimum value in the remaining set of array. In this way, the iteration keeps on running until it reaches the final element in the array. So once it reaches, that will produce a sorted array. Now let us see how exactly it works. Always remember, here in selection sort you have to always make note of the index which has the most least value in every iteration. So for that purpose, we will use the temporary variable called as a minimum index, and also the other variable called as a temp, which will store the value of the minimum index, right? Now let us see how exactly the logic is. The iteration starts with int I equal to 0, right, where I less than the array length minus 1. Array length minus 1, right? Again followed by I incrementation. After this, I have to make note of the index of the minimum value. So index is extracted by I. So minimum index equals to I, right? Now after this, I'll create a J loop. Int J equals to, it is I plus 1. Int J equals to, here J would be covering the remaining set of elements. Now I is 0, so 0 means it will be pointing towards 64. Now 64 must be comparing with the other set of elements. So what I will do in such case, I will increment the value of I, that is, it is I plus 1, so that the J iteration will start with 25 and it will be compared with 64, right? Int J equals to I plus 1, and the condition would go as J less than array dot length, and J gets incremented as it is. Now open the braces. And write the condition. If array of J, if it is less than array of what? Array of this minimum value. As I mentioned, the minimum value need to be compared, right? It will check if array of J means here, if it is less than the minimum index stored from the previous iteration. So if it is less, then it will assign the minimum index value, that is J. Now this loop, whatever we have written, is used to find the minimum value in unsorted array, right? So this value, this will find the minimum value in unsorted array. Now After finding the minimum value in unsorted array, we have to swap it. So we have to swap it. How you swap it? This is done. So you have to swap it. So you will create a temporary variable called as a temp, which will contain the value of a minimum index. Right? And next, you have to swap it. So array of minimum index would be array of I. Whatever you have found it, that would be the value. And next, the array of the and next the main iteration value would be the temp variable, right? So this is how you build a logic. Now let us see how exactly it works. Now let us begin. I starts with 0, right? From the iteration here, I starts with a 0, and the condition is I less than or equal to array dot length minus 1. What is the array dot length? It is 5. So 0 must be less than or equal to 5 minus 1, which is 4. Which means that this iteration will run for 4 times. That is from 0 to 3. Once I reaches 4, then the condition is false. Now it is assigning the minimum index. As of now, it is I value. So minimum index would be the value of I, that is 0. Next, it will start with a j loop where j equals to I plus 1. So I plus 1 means I is 0. 0 plus 1 is 1. Right? And the condition is j less than array dot length. What is the value of j? 1 less than array dot length is 5. Which means j loop will run for 4 times. Right? Now it is checking for the condition. Now it will check for the condition. What is the condition? It is array of j. Now what is the value of j I have here? Array of j means 1. So this is my first index. It is comparing with array of minimum index. Minimum index value stored is 0. So it is comparing it with 0. If 25 is less than 64, right? If 25 is less than 64, the condition is true. If it is true, what will happen? It will make note of the index, right? Minimum index would be noted. Minimum index is nothing but j, that is 1, right? So now this condition is true. Now the first iteration has been completed for j equal to 1. For j equal to 1, the iteration has been completed. Now j gets incremented. It will come to this temp variable or to the last. It will come to this part where we can swap the variable only when once this condition is false, right? So now it will increment j. J was 1, right? Now j will be 2, where 2 is less than 5. Now if you check array of j means j is 2. So the value is 24. Sorry, the value is 12. It will check if array of j, if 12 is less than array of minimum index. What is the minimum index of previous iteration we got? It is 1. So the value stored in the first index is 25. It is checking if 12 is less than 25. Is 12 less than 25? The condition is true. Since condition is true, now the latest value of minimum index would be the minimum index value. Which is minimum? 12. 12 is present at which position? J, second position, that is j equals to 2. So this would be 2, right? Or else even you can just make note of a j value, that is 2, right? Now again j gets incremented to 3. Third iteration starts for j, where 3 less than 5. Now again check for the condition. Array of j, that is array of 3, which is 20. Array of 3, which is 22. Less than array of minimum index. Minimum index is 2. That is, it is comparing with the previous element. Now, is 22 less than 12? It is not less than 12. Right? So, the condition is false. So, what happens? Minimum index value is not updated when j is 3. So, from when j was 2, the minimum index was 2. So, when j is 3, the condition is false. So, again j gets incremented, keeping the minimum index value as same. So when j is 4, 4 is less than 5. Now check array of j, that is array of 4 is 11. Array of minimum index. Minimum index from the second iteration what we got is 2. So if 11 is less than 12. So array of second position is 12. The condition is true. The condition is true. So the minimum index would be the j value which is 4. That is 11. Right? Now after 11 I don't have any value to compare. Now try to increment j, then j will be 5. So 5 less than 5, the condition is false. So when I is 0 and j, when I is 0, the minimum value the minimum index what we found was 4. And the value present at 4th index is 11. Now the condition becomes false when j is 5. So the loop will enter this part so that it can execute this code to swap the values. Now if you check, int temp equals to array of minimum index, right? Temp equals to array of minimum index. Now minimum index is 4. Array of minimum index, it will fetch me the value. So in temp I will store 11. Now array of, what is the minimum index I have? It is 4. Now at 4th position what I am storing? Array of I. What is array of I? I is 0. So at 0th index what I have? 64. So if you see, array of 4th variable has been getting swapped. Array of 4 is 11. Now array of I. Array of I means array of 0. I is 0 equal to temp. What I have in temp? 11. Now if I see 4th index and 0th index both are getting swapped. So in 0th index I will add 11 and in 4th index the updated value is 64. So this is my first iteration. Right? So this is my 0th iteration. Now let us move on to the first iteration where when I is 1. So here I is 1 and the condition is 1 less than 4 because it is array dot length minus 1. So 5 minus 1 is 4. Next, minimum index equals to the value of I. The value of I is 1, which means now the minimum index is 11. Clear? Now let me make a note of the array here so that it won't be confusing. The latest array after the first iteration is this. Right? This is my latest array after my first iteration. Now, when I is 1, the minimum index is also 1. So let's begin with a j loop where j equals to I plus 1. So I is 1, 1 plus 1 is 2 and the condition is 2 must be less than array dot length. Array dot length is 5 where the iteration will run for 3 times stopping at a 5th time. Right? Next, the condition is, now the control will be pointing towards 12 since j is 2. I have to check if 12 is less than the minimum index value. What is that minimum index value? Minimum index is 1. So the value at minimum index is 12. I have to check if 12 is less than 25. Right? So I will check if 12 is less than 25. So since the condition is true, then I will update the minimum index, which is the minimum value 12. So the index at minimum value is 2. So I will update this, right? It is j equal to 2. Now again j value gets incremented to 3. J value gets incremented to 3 where 3 is less than 5. Now array of j, that is array of 3 is 22. Now it will check if 22 is less than the value of the minimum index. From the previous iteration, we got the minimum index is 2. So the value of minimum index, that is array of 2, is 12. It will check for the condition. But this is false. 22 cannot be less than 12. Since it is false, the minimum index value does not get updated. So it will directly skip this statement and it will move on to the incrementation of j, where j would be incremented to 4 and the condition remains true. Now array of j, that is array of 4, what we have is 64, right? What we have is 64. Now it will compare if 64 is less than the minimum index what we have got. The minimum value index is 12. 64 less than 12, the condition is false. Clear? Now after 64, now the condition is false. Now it will move on to the incrementation of j, where j is 5. So when j is 5, 5 cannot be less than 5. So by seeing this, I can tell the minimum index is 2, where the value at array of 2 is 12. So when I is 1 for the first iteration, the minimum index is 12. So now I have to swap the variables. Clear? So it will come out of the j loop and I have to swap a variable. Swap both the variables. Temp equals to array of minimum index. So array of 2. At 2 what I have? 12. Right? 12. Next array of, what is the minimum index I have? 2. That is array of I. What is the I value I have? 1. So 25 would be placed at second index of the array. Similarly, array of I, that is 1, which is equal to the value of temp, 12. Right? So now if you see, array of 2, that is at the second position, I am swapping 25. Similarly, at the first position, I am swapping 12. So after first iteration, I can tell, after first iteration, this is my updated array, right? So let me copy and let me paste it here. Now the first iteration has been completed. Now moving on to the second iteration, where I would get incremented to 2, right? So 2 is less than 4, the condition is true. Now minimum index would be the value of I, that is 2. Means now the iteration begins from 25, where I have to compare 25 with the remaining set of elements, right? So the value of I is, the value of j is I plus 1, that is I plus 1 means 3. Clear? So clear? So 3 less than 5, the condition is true. Now it will check if array of j, that is if 22 is less than 25, array of j is 25. It is array of 3 is 25 less than array of minimum index. Minimum index is nothing but the value of I, right? Array of minimum index means array of 2, which is, array of j is 22, right? If 22 is less than 25, the condition is true. Clear? Since 22 is less than 25, the minimum index would be the value of the index of 22, that is 3. Right? Now, it will keep, now the j value will get incremented to 4. And the value at 4th position is 64. The value at 4th index is 64. And next, the value at minimum index, that is minimum index what we have got is 3. So it is 22. It will check if 64 is less than 22. But 64 cannot be less than 22. So the condition is false and minimum value won't be updated. Now when j gets incremented to 5, 5 cannot be less than 5. So from the second iteration, the minimum index what we have got is 3, which means the minimum index in second iteration, the minimum index value from second iteration is 22. Right? Now I have to swap 22 and 25. So I will use this logic to swap it. Variable which will contain the array of the, which will contain the minimum index value. So minimum index what we have is 3 and the value present in third position is 22. Now array of the minimum index, that is 3, which I have to swap it, right? So I will be swapping with the iteration, with the main iteration value, that is 2. I is 2. So array of 2 is, what is array of 2? I have 25, right? Next, array of 2, I have to swap even the second index value. So array of 2 would be the value of the minimum index, that is 22, right? Now array of 2 is 22 and array of 3 is 25. So this is my updated array after second iteration. Now moving on to third iteration. Third iteration begins when I equal to 3. So 3 less than 4, the condition is true. Now minimum index would be the value of I, that is 3. Now j would be I plus 1, that is 4, right? Where 4 less than 5, the condition is true. Now array of j is 64. 64 less than array of minimum index value. So minimum index is 3. It will check the value of index 3, that is 64 less than 25. The condition is false. So since the condition is false, it doesn't increment next. Even though it increments, the condition goes false again because 5 cannot be less than 5, right? Now j value has been completed. It must assign that, it must swap the values. Clear? So try swapping the values. Temp equals to array of minimum index. Array, what is the array of minimum index we have? It is 3. So the value presented at third index is 25, right? Where is this temp? Yeah, here it is. It is 25. Now array of minimum index value, it is array of I. What is array of I? At third index we have 25. Now array of I, that is third index, which is equal to the temporary value, which is 25. So array of 3 remains 25. Here this doesn't change, that is the array doesn't change because because the condition becomes false at the first iteration itself. Even though we try swapping the value, the value remain as it is because the minimum index has not been updated. So this remains the latest array after latest array when j is 3. Now if you notice, this is your first array, right? Yes, this is your first array after sorting. If you see, only 11 is in the first order, where the remaining elements are still pending. Now this is the second array, second updated array after sorting when I is 1. So if you notice, 11 and 12 are in the correct order. Similarly, in the third iteration, 11, 12, 20 are in the correct order, right? After this, we have to check if 25 and 64, if both are in correct order or not. But finally, when I is 3, we have got the sorted array, right? If you remember earlier, earlier at 0th index, I had 64, right? 64, and at the first index, I had 12, and at the first index, I had 25. Next, it was 12 and 22 and 11. Yes, this was my original array. So this was my original array, and finally using selection sort, we have sorted the array element, right? From original array to a sorted array. If you see, there is a lot of difference. So this is how selection sort works. Now let us move on to editor. This is the program written for selection sort, and I have made use of the same logic. If you see, for the I loop, I have decremented it using the array of length. Minimum index will store the index of the minimum value. Next, followed by a j loop, which will compare with the other elements. So we are incrementing I with 1. Here we cannot directly write I plus plus. That is totally wrong. In such case, I do not get incremented at all. For example, like if I write I plus plus, initially the original value of I would be 0. So it will start comparing with 0 it will start comparing with 0th element. For the next time, when j gets incremented, the value of I would again get incremented to 1. Again, the first index value would be compared to the first index value. That is totally wrong. So for that purpose, we are making use of I plus 1 here. Like we will be writing I plus 1. And next followed by the condition where which will compute, which will take the latest value of the minimum index. After that, we have to swap the elements. We have to swap the variables. Here I have written a main function which will take the size of the array as well as the array elements from the user using scanner. Now let me run the program. Yes, enter the size of array. It is 5. Now let me enter the same set of element, that is 64, 25, 12, 11 and 22. I think 11 and 12 got swapped here. It's okay. Yeah. The sorted array is 11, 12, 22, 25 and 64. Now let me run the program once again. Enter the size of the array. Let it be 6 and let me enter some huge variables. So if you see, selection sort has sorted the unsorted array elements. So this is how selection sort works. Initially you get confused while you are tracing the program. Like once you get hold of the first iteration, like you will be able to solve, you will be able to trace the program and also make sure that you are building the logic. Do not directly, just for a practice purpose, you can take the logic from the program. But to build the programming skills, you have to build your logic by yourself. Initially try to solve it, then you try to link with the programming logic where your actual coding begins. That is how you learn programming. In the upcoming video, like we will discuss some more concepts, some more programs like this. Till then, keep watching. Till then, keep practicing and like the video and subscribe to the channel if you have understood. Thank you.